Welcome to the Buck Stops here, the official podcast of NotInHallOfFame.com, and I'm your host, The Buck, Kirk Buchner, owner, operator of NotInHallOfFame.com and its sister sites, the Fictitious Athlete Hall of Fame and the Fictitious Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. If you haven't had a chance, take a look at it, cast your vote. Semi-finalists are going to be are already decided, actually, and it's the finalists that will be announced in the next month or so. So, we are finishing a series, Part 8 of an 8-part series, looking at those in all the different divisions in the NFL who are worth your time to think about for Hall of Fame consideration. With me, as always, for that is Vinny Lospinuso, probably one of the great future broadcasters of the NFL of our time, and I'm really happy that he's joined us again. So, with that, no other further ado, let's bring Vinny back. Vinny, it's good to have you back. It's the end of an era now. Part 8 is finally here.
Yeah, it feels pretty bittersweet for me, Kirk. I remember last year starting the whole series. Mm-hmm. AFC West, and here we are at NFC North. All good things come to an end, I assume.
It's hard to sort of come up with a division, though, that is sort of a better way to end this off.
No, you can. Like, the whole thing is about guys all throughout the history of pro football, particularly the NFL. And what better way to do it than have a division with that has the oldest amount of teams in? Because you have the Chicago Bears, who were founded in 1920, the Green Bay Packers, who were founded in 1919, the Detroit Lions, who were founded in 1934, and the Minnesota Vikings, who were founded in 1961, I believe.
Yeah, and the Vikings, and they've got so much history going for them, and they're the youngest team. Just really shows how big this division is, and yet I've put a muzzle on you again. I'm limiting you to only 6 players.
Don't worry, that's fine by me. That is absolutely fine by me, because you might think like, oh, the Bears, of course, the Packers, of course, the Vikings, even then, but you would think, oh, the Lions, oh, geez. No, the Lions have a lot of qualified players as well.
Absolutely.
In fact, the Lions have 15 members. Fun fact, the Lions actually have 15 members that are currently in the Hall of Fame.
Who has the most, do you know?
Yeah, the Bears with 28.
Okay. I should know that, but I don't. Okay. 15 Lions, and I think a lot of people, well, even myself, I mean, like, I'm, 27 years older than you, and yet you and I have something in common. Neither of us ever remember the Lions being any good.
No, but we'll get to the Lions when we get to the Lions. You know how we always do it.
Yes.
It's
alphabetical.
But now, the NFL is celebrating its 100th anniversary. Mm-hmm. But the Chicago Bears are also celebrating their 100th anniversary.
They are.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they are now the 3rd team to cross the 100 barrier in the NFL. The other 2 being the Arizona Cardinals, who were founded in 1898. Yeah, you're going to see those images that say 1920, but no, that's a lie. That's when they became a professional team, because they were founded in 1898 as an amateur team before they switched to professional league. Mm-hmm. And the Packers were founded in 1919, and the Bears were founded in 1920.
Yeah, the Bears. Oh, did you watch? So you obviously watched the first game on the last Thursday night. Sort of nice seeing the super fans back, which you probably never saw before. That's the old Saturday Night Live bit.
Oh, I know who the Bill Zworski super fans are.
Oh, you do? Okay, I wasn't sure.
One of them dead, and the other one wasn't there. I'm referring to, Chris Farley, who died in 1997, and Mike Myers, who was one of the other guys. For some reason, he wasn't there.
Well, Mike Myers doesn't appear a whole lot, and I think I don't even know if Mike Myers is even really a Bears fan. I doubt that he really is. Him being a Toronto boy.
But Chris Farley was a Packers fan.
Yeah. Well, really? I thought. Well, Farley's from Chicago, though, isn't he?
No, Farley's from Madison, Wisconsin.
Okay. Well, the North. At least in a geographic area where he feels comfortable enough to talk about Bears super fandom. But yeah, you won't see Mike Myers appear too much. Myers, well, we could do a whole podcast just on Mike Myers.
Guy, one that is an American. He's Canadian.
Yes. No. He's an interesting character, but we'll leave that for another show. So.
Okay.
Yeah. Nice. Who's your first Bear that you got up? There's quite a few you could choose from.
Name. Sorry. Okay. My first Bear. Okay. Now, listen. You know how everyone has a tough, gritty name? Like, my most wanted guy, Duke Slater. I mean, that name is awesome. Mm-hmm. Well, what comes to your mind when your name is Ed Sprinkle?
The opposite?
Well, no, you don't really exactly think of the toughest. You don't really think of a gladiator kind of guy. Because really, Sprinkle, it's like, you name like a little chihuahua. I mean, it doesn't sound that intimidating. I mean, your last name is Sprinkle. Never judge the book by its cover, nor judge anything by its name. Because despite his last name being a topping on your ice cream sundae, Ed Sprinkle was called the meanest man in pro football. He was known for a really aggressive player on the field. Yeah, not bad for a guy with a last name Sprinkle.
You think you got to be tough, though, when that's your name? But that just sort of shows, like, what a mean bastard you have to be in a sport that is this violent, especially in that era.
Yeah, I mean, he was literally called the meanest man in football. He was, I mean, hell, he was so good that George Halas gave him his number 7 when he was playing for the Bears.
Oh, I didn't know that.
George Halas also played. Okay. Yeah, do you understand how good you have to be for George Halas to give you your number and your last name is Sprinkle?
Well, maybe he was afraid.
Yeah. He also, the reason why Halas gave it to him, because George Halas, Papa Bear, understand who we're talking about here, he called Sprinkle the greatest pass rusher he's ever seen.
He did say that, yes.
Yeah, Sprinkle is serious, guys. He was a defensive end.
Well, when you get praise like that from a George Halas or just like even any giant name like that, it carries so much weight, and that's a legacy that never dies. I mean, like, we obviously never saw him play other than beyond maybe a few clips that you can find, but those quotes they live on. We all know who Halas is.
Yeah, everyone knows who George Halas is. You know, Ed Sprinkle, like I told you before, about guys that I would classify as an impact guy, an award guy, and a stat guy. All three are very important. Sprinkle, I would easily put as an impact guy because, you know, obviously offensive players generally take the attention. They usually have the jersey sales. The quarterback is always the one that everyone looks at. But back then, believe it or not, no one paid attention to a lot of the defensive guys. People didn't really pay attention to it. And then along comes Ed Sprinkle, and he became the guy that's credited for calling attention to the NFL's defensive players.
Was he not an all-decade team too?
Yes, he was part of the 1940s all-decade team, along with 5-time All-Pro and 4-time Pro Bowler. Yes, he did make the 1940s all-decade team. In fact, he did.
I think also, didn't his Pro Bowls also come in the 50s? So, I mean, I know he wasn't all-decade in the 50s, but he was certainly, I'm sure when they came up with that, he had to have been in the conversation.
It's my understanding, Pro Bowls didn't happen during the 40s, so I would not hold on against them at all.
No, I'm just saying that he was, like, yeah, he's got the all-decade in the 40s, and then he could have been maybe all-decade 50s. Or at least a case could have been made.
But when it comes to Sprinkle, there's no Pro Bowl, so that's why it's a little tougher to see, how was he during the 40s? Well, right. Don't worry, because he was all-decade team in the 40s, and he got his Pro Bowls in the 50s.
Mm-hmm.
That tells you that he was most likely the same dominant player as he was in the 40s as he was in the 50s.
Yeah, no, that's a great start. Who you got next?
Well, we were talking about the 1950s all-decade team.
Mm-hmm.
The 1950s all-decade team. And, you know, like I said, the Bears are known for defense. And, of course, Ed Sprinkle was the guy that was credited for calling attention to the defensive guys. And he's, I would say, easily the best Bear, most impactful Bear not in the Hall of Fame. Absolutely. Well, we were talking about the 1950s all-decade team. And you look at the defense, and you look at the offense, and then you look at the defense. And you look at all those great names. Night Train Lane, Jack Butler, Bill George, Art Donovan, Gino Marchetti, Emlyn Tunnell, they're all inducted. But you look at that defensive team from the 1950s, and there's only one guy from the 1950s All-Decade team on the defensive side of the ball that is not currently in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. That is Joe Fortunato.
Yes.
From that alone, you kind of do feel a little bad from the fact that really he's the only guy left. He is the only guy on that All-Decade team that is not in. I mean, you would think that you'd want to fill that quota potentially.
Why do you suppose he's not?
What?
Why do you suppose he's not?
Well, the most recent guy from the 1950s All-Decade on defense that made it was Jack Butler, who absolutely deserved to be in, and it did make sense because of his high interception total and whatnot. But I think Joe Fortunato, the reason as to why he's not in is probably the same reason why Ed Sprinkle's not in. In fact, it's also probably the reason why it took so long for Jerry Kramer to get in. Because you always had those people that said, oh, there's too many Packers not in the Hall of Fame. Please just put some attention to other sides. And while it does make sense in theory, it does infuriate the fans of that team. And you're saying, oh, really? You're not going to give credit to what credit's due? Why should that player be punished because he was on a team with other Hall of Famers as well? He was one as well. And that's the same reasons why Fortunato is not in the Hall of Fame. And looking from that mindset, that's the case. And also the fact that he played linebacker, and they're trying to get some more linebackers in the Hall of Fame. Eventually, Howley and Vaughn, Novus, and Radishar will eventually make it. But Fortunato, it's one of those guys that you don't really hear that much about, and I don't know why.
Yeah, and he's got the championship. He's got the All Pros. He does something Sprinkle doesn't have. He's got the cool name, Joe Fortunato.
Well,
that's an old time football name.
Yeah, Fortunato. It sounds very, very old timey. Also, I think another reason for why he's not in yet is because his career started in 1955, but he was drafted back in 1952 in the seventh round. Well, he was picked today. That would be like in the third round. But the reason why that's the case is because he went to
the Korean War.
He went to the military.
Yeah. Which was the case of a lot of those guys back then too.
I'm not gonna hold that against him.
No, for sure.
Against him because he served our country and he deserves to be treated as a patriot.
Our country, not my country.
Well, for me, not for you. And he kind of, in a way, he could have played a little bit longer. He did make it All-Pro in his final year in the league. In fact, he was a 6-time All-Pro and a 5-time Pro Bowler. Again, that's the de facto 6-time Pro Bowl. And he could have had more. The reason why he didn't have more was because he was in the military for those first few years. And I'm not going to hold that against him.
No.
And things came together because in '63, behind Bill George and Doug Atkins, both in the Hall of Fame, the Bears led the NFL by a massively wide margin in the fewest rushing and passing yards allowed. And they allowed only 10.3 points per game. League best. And also, football historian in the book Total Football in 97 named him one of the 300 greatest players in NFL history.
It's high praise. All right.
Very high praise.
So who do you got next?
You like the letter K?
Do I like the letter K? Well, my first name's Kirk, so I'll say yes.
Well, yeah. What about Ken Kavanaugh?
Okay.
Ken Kavanaugh, again, another guy in which he could have played but in 42 and 44, he
World War II.
went.
Yep.
World War II. A lot of players wanted to do that. He was there for 3 years. And, he was phenomenal. He really was a phenomenal player for the Chicago Bears. In fact, he was part of the 1940s All-Decade team along with Bello Bear and Sprinkle. So what did Ken Kavanaugh do that was so great as an end, which is basically a wide receiver? We're going to get to my most wanted end from this list coming soon. But when you look at the stats, the career of Ken Kavanaugh, I just got to pull this up for a second. Computer's loading a little bit. You look at Ken Kavanaugh. He won the NFL championship 3 times, 40, 41, and 46. When he came back in 46, he had 3 straight years making a first-team All-Pro, and also led the league in receiving touchdowns in 47 and 49. So in reality, he could have also been an All-Pro in 49 as well.
Yeah, there was a case could be made. Also, too, he was a pretty big deal in college, if I remember correctly.
Yes, he was. But I'm going to say this. Like, I was talking to you yesterday about Sean Jackson and how, with all the 50-yard touchdowns he accumulated through his career, and plus his yards per catch rating, that could be a really, really unique case. Well, Ken Kavanaugh has an average 18.7 yards per catch or better in every single year that he played.
Which is phenomenal. No, like, I don't care what era this is and how many catches you have. Like that's...
And his average, by the way, 22.4.
Oh my God. Which is sick. It's sick. It's a sick number.
162 catches, 50 of them were touchdowns. I mean, that's some pretty historically important stuff.
Yeah, and he's got the titles. He's got the accolades. It's an excellent choice. Who's number 4?
Yeah. Oh, that's the record. We're going to go with a guy that I like to call the Kenny Easley of the offensive side of the ball because of an interesting reason. Kenny Easley was the only guy on the 80s All-Decade team, the defensive side on the first team, that did not make it. The offense still has their guy that is not in yet.
Yeah, Easley's in, though, now.
Yes, but there's one player on the offensive side of the ball on the 1980s first team that is not in. That is Jimbo Covert.
The first man eliminated in the WrestleMania 2 Battle Royal. Just wanted to throw that in.
Damn. Well, this is a little bit of an... I heard his name mentioned a few times as a potential candidate for 2020. So this is an important one, Jimbo Covert. Now, granted, he only has 2 All-Pros and 2 Pro Bowls. However, one he was with the Bears because that was the only team he played for. He was 4-time first-team All-NFC, the 1985 Players Association Offensive Lineman of the Year, and the 1986 Miller Lite Offensive Lineman of the Year. And, of course, he made 1980s All-Decade team first team. And the other guys that made the All-Decade team were Anthony Munoz, who made a first team, Gary Zimmerman, who made a second team. Both of those 2 are in. And, Joey Jacoby, who's been a 3-time finalist.
Yeah, I want to go back to that 1985 thing, though, if I could. Sorry to interject here. I think that's something that really should be touched on because now I'm going back in my memory bank because I lived through all that stuff and the Chicago Bears mania of the Super Bowl shuffle. Have you ever seen that, by the way?
I've had the displeasure of watching that, yes.
Yeah, and that is actually something also on the website where I blame that song for making athletes think that they could sing. To all athletes who are out there, no, you can't. Or no, you shouldn't. And just go right back to that one. I'm going to send you a link after of something that's actually way worse from the same era that you probably never heard of, where it's the Dodgers doing it. But I digress. He won that, but so Covert wins that in 85, the year that he's getting virtually no attention because of William the Refrigerator Perry, someone who I'm guaranteeing you're not going to talk about. He was a good player, but he was a gimmick.
No, I'm not going to say Cutler's name either. So I'm sorry.
I don't even think his teammates say his name in any capacity other than negative. Oh man,
yeah,
Cutler, the most hated man in football.
But as for Jimbo Cutler, he was an All-Pro for 4 straight years, and Bill Parcells once said that Covert was better than all those guys in the NFC at the time. Now remember, NFC, an entire conference. He was way better. It's not even close. He was one of the best in 30 years of football. Other guys had to help against Taylor.
Yeah. And in his best year, he just didn't get the credit because he wasn't even the most known guy on his line because of the refrigerator. And I'll admit, I was 13 when that all happened. That's all I cared about was the fridge. I knew Jim McMahon, the Fridge, and Sweetness. And, like, you know who these other guys are because again, they got so much attention. But those were the three guys you gravitated towards, especially, when... God, was I even a teenager then? I'm not even sure. But if it had captured your imagination, and I think it took a lot of the shine off of Jimbo.
Yeah, Jimbo was great. Now, granted, he only has 2 Pro Bowls, but who cares? Your first team all decade.
Yeah, and that says a lot. And the most dominating team, I don't care how good New England. Well, if New England would have won during that undefeated season, regular season, then I'd change that answer. But the best regular season team in my lifetime was the '85 Bears.
The funny thing is that they destroyed the Patriots in Super Bowl 20, but Patriots fans don't like that exists because either they forget that exists, don't like to mention it, or believe that the team was founded in 2000.
I think there's a lot of people. I think my wife might think that. But that's another story for another time.
And tell them about Gino Cappelletti.
Oh, fuck yeah. That's she won't care. She won't care. Well, I mean, her fandom, though, she's, to her credit, because I know she'll listen later, when she moved to Canada, she went to school in southern New Hampshire. So she, when we first met and she started watching sports with me, she didn't latch on to all the teams I liked. She just went with all Boston teams. So it just happened to work out it was a perfect city.
Guessing there's not many notable professional sports leagues in Indonesia.
No. Although I do have a soccer jersey from the local team from where she's from. I have a goalie jersey from Persip. And that's a pretty bad tangent. All right, Jimbo's number 4. Another good choice. Actually, glad we could talk about him. Who's number 5?
Let's continue with that offensive line, shall we?
Sure.
Why don't you look a little bit more to the years of the interior for this one and talk about Jay Hilgenberg?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
This is a good name. This really is a good name. Can you imagine being an all-pro 5 times the center?
It doesn't happen often. Yeah, actually, it's funny. I met his parents actually.
You met Jay Hilgenberg's parents?
Yeah.
I had that one down.
Well, it's just one of those random things. I was when I was living in Jasper, Alberta. I was working for the train station, specifically for Rocky Mountaineer. It was one of the jobs that I had, and there was this gentleman, because I'm in Canada. American college football is not that big, and he was wearing an Iowa Hawkeye hat. And it was just the logo. So of Iowa. Says, okay, so I see you're a Hawkeyes fan. And he looks at me like, oh, how do you know that? I said, I pay attention to him. And then he said who his son was. Oh, my son played there. Who's that? Yeah. Oh, you wouldn't know him. And he said, like, yeah, of course I know who he is.
Yeah, Jay Hilgenberg, I mean, he really was one of the best centers of his time. Now, granted, I would say that luckily it's getting a little bit better, but the interior lineman is obviously not going to be as notable as the bookend tackles. That tends to be how it is. And you know me, I'm a guy that also likes the interior guys. But also, it doesn't help. Actually, it does help. I'm not too sure. But on the 1980s All-Decade team, Dwight Stevenson and Mike Webster are both in the Hall of Fame. So you already got both the All-Decade centers out of the way. So we would have to venture off into the ones that are not, and you look at Jay Hilgenberg. Yes, he was, in fact, a more guy that was chilling in the background while, the refrigerator was getting all the attention. But I got to say that, if you're looking for more centers, that's a good name to consider, I would think.
No, very much so.
Yeah, the All-Pros. Yeah, it's a championship. He's also a member on that key offensive line.
Mm-hmm.
But, as I say, not before Jimbo. Not before Jimbo.
Mm-hmm.
Not before Jimbo. Jimbo has the all-decade team. That's nothing against Jay, but I think even he would say, I want Jimbo to get him before I do.
Next time I see his dad, I'll ask. Which probably won't happen.
It's probably unlikely that lightning will strike twice.
Yeah, exactly. All right, so I think I know who your number 6 guy will be. Does it start? Is it a special teams gentleman?
Yes, it is a special teams gentleman, Devin Hester.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I was expecting his name to come up. So I think we could agree that if any special teams guy is going to get into the Hall of Fame, which is a dying breed now, just the way the NFL is evolving, Hester has gone on record that he says he's a Hall of Famer, and a lot of publications say the same. Is he a first ballot Hall of Famer?
He's not a first ballot Hall of Famer. He's not making a first ballot. Let's be real here.
Okay. When do you see him getting in?
When Tasker and Mitchell gets in.
Tasker's not getting in.
I don't know. Tasker has a very big push by Bills fans, and he has been a semifinalist multiple years. Mitchell also has the record, and you remember in the last part how I had massive praise for Brian Mitchell.
Mm-hmm.
Hester is the greatest return specialist ever. He is. But I just wonder, I think Bears fans are going to go literally all out for him.
Mm-hmm.
Now, granted, he's not eligible yet. He's going to be eligible in 2022.
Right.
I think it might be a little while, but I really do think, Bears fans are going to literally campaign like crazy for the guy. But
I think so.
If I'm being honest, I think Tasker will probably get in first, and then Mitchell or Hester.
Well, if you were a betting man, I'd bet against. I'd say I'll say right now, Hester gets in before Tasker. No doubt in my mind.
You know what? I agree with that. I think you're onto something. Now, granted, I say Tasker best mainly because of the semifinalists, but he also hasn't been a semifinalist in a few years.
And I'm not saying that Tasker. This is not, and I just want to be very clear to Bills fans. This is not a shot at Tasker. This is just what I think will happen.
And if Bills Mafia wants Keith Tasker, they gotta literally campaign like crazy for him. And I do think they will. Just don't go to Raiders fans level, please.
Oh God, yeah, I don't. Well, yeah, that thing about just the other day with Jim Plunkett, and I get your point, but when the Raiders fans sort of push that, I don't even know that he'd be the quarterback I'd push for. Who's not in? I can make a better case for Rich Gannon.
Yeah, you can make a better case for Rich Gannon, or even Daryl LaMonica.
Yes.
But apparently Plunkett's got the two Super Bowls, so. And why not also mention Jack Kemp, because he's got the two championships.
But
he's got the.
It's all about the legacy though, Vinny. Because when Plunkett did all that, that's when the Raiders were the fear. That's when the Raiders really had their identity. It didn't happen under LaMonica, under Gannon. Although I think he really there's just as good a story with how he sort of came into his own in his mid 30s, and it's a great story. Almost got a Super Bowl win out of him. Former MVP, but the Raiders weren't the same silver and black defensive beasts. We're segueing.
I guess when it comes to I guess when it comes to a guy like Hester, I'm a guy with a massive love for special teamers because, I'm all about the ones that aren't as respected. I'm all about the guys that are forgotten, like Duke Slaters. Mm-hmm. I'm all about all those other guys. When I look at the specialists, one of my most wanted guys, and he just retired not too long ago, Shane Leckler is one of my most wanted guys.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we talked about him.
And Devin Hester, I would love to see him in. I would love to see because you have Chris Cluey, the former Vikings punter, who is very big on wanting special teamers in the Hall of Fame. But he's a little bit of an interesting character. So that's a big reason as to why usually most people aren't going to really pay attention to him. But you need there are a couple people that have been mentioning special teamers, and I do think there's going to be an increase of popularity because if the kick return goes, people are going to want their Tasker and their Mitchell and their their Hester.
I hope so. I really hope so. All right, so moving on to, I guess we're going to move a little bit east here, going to Detroit. We took a little shot at them earlier, but Detroit, well, Jesus.
Booty cheeks.
What the hell is that?
Oh, Jesus Christ. The Detroit Lions, my entire life, have been, yes, even with Matthew Stafford.
Your entire life, my entire life, and I'm twice as old.
Whenever I think of a team that, like, forever has been just awful, I always think of the Detroit Lions. Always.
Mm-hmm.
I always think of the Detroit Lions. They have just always been at the very bottom of the barrel in terms of, record-wise, in terms of appeal nationally or even internationally. They're very, very low. At least they have Thanksgiving, so that way we can see them win or lose. A little bit more lose than win on Thanksgiving and proceed to watch the Cowboys and then someone else play the third game. The reason why it's actually probably one of the best things, it's what most people know about the Detroit Lions for, is that they're the team that plays every year on Thanksgiving.
Yeah, they're always the first team that loses that day.
Sometimes, but they have been winning more in recent years, but just not the last 2 years, though. Looks like knowing how the Bears are, it looks like that tradition is going to continue.
So who do we got? Who do we got for the Lions?
Well, first off, before we get to who my guy is, I do want to mention that the Lions have been bad for, like, my history, everyone's history for the most part. But surprisingly, long ago, back when Pepperidge Farm remembers this, back in the 50s, they were the premier team in the NFL. In fact, their biggest rival that they would meet a lot of times in the playoffs, in the championship game, was the Cleveland Browns. That's why they always have a preseason game against the two, because of their ancient history that goes back to each other. Now they have, like, no rivalry at all. The rivalry is dead. But it's a very, very big cornerstone in NFL history, the Lions and the Bears, of those very, very old teams. And yeah, the Lions really were a great team for a long time. In fact, as I mentioned before, the Lions surprisingly have a pretty decent amount of Hall of Famers in. They have a total of 15 Hall of Famers.
Which is a lot. That's an awful lot. But I have a feeling you can come up with 6 more.
Oh, yeah. When it comes to the Detroit Lions, you're looking at a team, along with the Cowboys and the Eagles, one of 3 teams I could see with 2 guys making it on the 2020 Blue Ribbon Committee. Which, for a team like the Lions, who have only had 1 playoff win in 50 years, not bad. But a lot of people mention, like, the 60s era. But the question I have is, who is the best player from the 60s not in the Hall of Fame? There's a lot. There's a lot of great players from that era not in the Hall of Fame. And, this guy happened to play for the Silver and Honolulu Blue. And this guy also has a descendant that is currently playing center for the Patriots as we speak. And we know who I'm talking about.
Yeah, Webster's dad.
Alex Karras. That's who I'm talking about. Defensive tackle, 9-time All-Pro, 4-time Pro Bowler, 1960s All-Decade team, the best player from the 1960s not in the Hall of Fame. By far.
Have you seen him in Blazing Saddles?
I've never seen any of the movies that he ever starred in.
All right, he's essentially there's this one scene where he knocks out a horse.
Nay.
Yeah, well, nay, it's true. And he plays his character name, and it was a perfect segue because we just talked about the Bears. His name in the movie was Mongo.
Mongo, like Jungle Book.
Oh, I don't know. Is there a Mongo in Jungle Book?
I'm not sure. But
never seen Jungle Book, any version.
What's crazy, the reason as to why I think Alex Karras is in the Hall of Fame is, well, first off, I do want to mention this. He also worked. He was in Hollywood for many years, and he was also on ABC. I think he was also on Monday Night Football.
Yep.
So, yeah, the question I have is all these people that say, oh, they only let guys during the media. Okay. If that's the case, then why isn't Alex Karras in the Hall of Fame?
Oh, you think it's the gambling?
What?
You think it's the year he was suspended for gambling?
I think so, yeah. But what's weird is how, Paul Hornick was also suspended as well. And Hornick, Hall of Fame, he's a legend. Mm-hmm. But, yeah, maybe there's a bias against the Lions. I have no idea. But, yeah, it did not affect Hornick, but in true Lions fashion, it affected Karras.
Yeah, but, and the Karras, though, I mean, like, I always thought that he was sort of done wrong that way, but he certainly made the most of his career outside of football. He did so well.
Oh, he was great. Again, I emphasize, Alex Karras is the best player from the 1960s All-Decade team that is not in the Hall of Fame. He's not the best player for the 1960s as a whole. That's Winston Hill from the Jets. But in terms of the NFL All-Decade team, the 1960s, Alex Karras, easily, no question in my mind.
All right, cool.
He was the leader of that. He was the leader of that dominant Lions defense. Who he led the league in. The Lions were so good that they had the top scoring defense 5 times in his career, and he was so strong at the point of content, and that's the point that he couldn't even move. That you couldn't even budge him.
Well, I figured that's where you were going to start. Who do you got next? Now, this one, I don't even know where you're going to go next. I knew where this was going to begin. I knew where the Bears was ending. Right now, I can't wait. Who do you got?
Well, I do want to mention one thing. You could try to bring him down, but you're going to need a lot of horsepower. But sometimes you need the force of the bull. You need to be strong like a bull. But what's close to a bull? It's an ox.
Ox Emerson.
Ox
Okay.
Emerson.
Yeah.
I should mention. Ox Emerson. You're going really back for this one. His real name is Grover Emerson, but his nickname was Ox because Grover, you think of the guy from Sesame Street, or the only president to have 2 non-consecutive terms. I mean, the name Grover doesn't really strike fear, but Ox does. And that's what he was when he played in the 1930s for the Detroit Lions, but also the Portsmouth Spartans and the Brooklyn Dodgers, the NFL team that shortly existed, not the baseball team. He was great. He was
All-Decade team, right? Isn't he?
All 1930s. I was like the best player from the entire 1930s decade, not in the Hall of Fame.
Okay, yeah, excellent. And up next?
But I want to keep going with Ox.
You want to keep going with the Ox? All right, hit it.
Ox Emerson, I think, is also going to make it in 2020 as well. Can you imagine being first-team All-Pro, unanimous, 6 years in a row?
The resume's there. It definitely is, and we're so happy, they're going to be adding more players this year.
Unanimous. He was arguably the best part of his era. Can you imagine 6 times in a row, unanimous? Everyone agrees he is the best interior. Oh, yes, it's Ox Emerson. It's Ox. Ride with the Ox. Ride with Ox. And he was so great. He was great on offense. He was good on defense, and he was good on special teams. In fact, he was so good, he was there almost literally every single play. On offense, he was able to get the second and third levels on the defense, and the team ran well to his side. And he was quick off the snap and was very explosive. He was a very hard hitter. Again, the nickname fits very well. But on defense, he was very, very alert. He could stop the run. Remember, back then in the 30s, you didn't have one fixed position, so he was all over the place, a lot of the players. He had very great pursuit. His motor just never stopped. And on special teams, he always made a play. And, yeah, really, really dominant player. I take it back. He was consensus 4 times, but he was first team a total of 6 times. But he technically is a 7-time All-Pro, if you really think about it, because he was in an honorable mention of 10 coaches released by the AP, which was considered an official All-Pro team by the NFL. So if you really think about it, this is a guy that was a 7-time All-Pro, and he also led the Lions to a championship in 1934.
There's very few with a more solid resume than the Ox. Very few.
Yeah, that's I say that's a pretty dominant two. I mean, literally, like, in mind, one for the Lions, it's like these two are all the way up there. Everywhere else is much lower. But then again, that's massive high praise for Karras and Emerson. Like, those two guys, I really think you're going to see at least one of those two make it in 2020. That's how good they were.
I think it would be, not that I want to think about politics in this, but I would imagine, Karras passed away, what was it, 2 years ago or a year ago? It wasn't that long.
2012 or 2012.
Was it 2012? Was it that long ago? Okay, well then, I'm going to take back where I was sort of thinking, because
October 10, 2012.
Okay, yeah, because I was going to say, because I actually thought it was a lot more recent than that, but what I was going to say is I always would think that they don't want to sort of like induct someone who they could have done when they were alive recently, but if it's been that long, then forget that thought.
Yeah, people don't really like the thought of that, and they've been pretty apparent that they don't like that idea. So yeah, I really do think Karras, Emerson, Instant, that's how I think about just phenomenal players.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely should be in.
All right, so who's number 3?
The passion's going to be a little bit not as strong for this one,
That's
but
okay.
Robert Horschmeyer is the third guy I have on here.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you probably don't know who Robert Horschmeyer is because I barely know who the guy is, but he was a 2-time Pro Bowler. He was a 2-time All-Pro, and he was the NFL's leading rusher for the team for 4 straight years, and he led the league with a record of 6,000 total yards of offense in 1950.
That's for that era. That's solid.
Well, keep step back. Not the NFL, the AFC.
Mm-hmm.
Because he also played with the Chicago Rockets and the Brooklyn Dodgers, which were AFC teams.
Right,
Remember, this is the league that the Browns and the 49ers came from.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, which doesn't help him at all, for sure.
But it doesn't hurt him because, remember, the AFC had the same competition as the NFL.
Sure, but it's also from teams that don't exist. It's one thing if you're a former Niner or a Brown. It's quite another if you're a former Chicago Rocket. And you have to tell people in Chicago, what do you mean there was the team called the Rockets? No, it's always been the Bears.
Nah, fam, that's not true.
Well, you know what I'm saying.
But yeah, when the AFC was around, he was one of the best players from there. And yeah, like, I'd say that's not bad for a guy like him. There's also another thing that I should mention about Horschmeyer. If you count AFC total, he finished 4th all time in rushing.
At the time of his retirement?
Yeah, when he retired, he was 4th all time in rushing.
Okay. I would not have known that. Interesting.
Well, yeah, to be fair, I'm not going to degrade you for that. Because Horschmeyer is that's kind of like lost in the shuffle. And yeah, I would say, like, again, like the top two were very, very, this was very, very top heavy, and everyone else is a little bit, in the seniors, it's a little bit thinner. And then next, this one's a little interesting. Wally Triplett. Have you heard of that name?
Triplett? No. I don't think I'm familiar with this.
Yeah, Wallace Triplett, who shot for the Lions in 1949, and yes, his career was a little bit short. He only had 4 seasons. But this is one of those guys that would classify as an impact guy.
Okay.
First African-American. African American to ever be drafted.
What year was that?
Not that. 1949.
Shame it took so long for that to happen. Okay. What else? Because I'm
Well,
not familiar about the. I'm really not familiar with this name.
Yeah, he when they were against the Rams, he set the Lions' single-game record of a kickoff return yardage of 294 yards, which is the second highest total in NFL history, including a 97-yard touchdown return, and his average of 73.5 yards return in that game is also an NFL record. So, yeah, he's had some pretty impressive records. And, yeah, his career was a little short, but, again, his portrait is in the Hall of Fame. There's a portrait of him in the Hall of Fame. So
oh, really?
Why not have a bust as well?
In what area is that? Is that like in the Lions section that they have?
I have no idea where that is.
Okay.
But yeah, he was like, again, like, I know that this kid's a little weak. But it actually isn't that bad when you consider that there's a portrait of him there, and he died recently, and he was the first of his kind.
Yeah, I see where you're going with that. It's well, this is another bad segue that won't mean anything to you, but it's the same argument I have about putting New Order in the Joy Division in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Well, you're showing you've got little mini section about them in the actual hall, but they're not members. But that's another story for another time.
Also, I should mention this. When I was at the Baseball Hall of Fame last year, they had an entire section dedicated to the 1998 home run competition between Sammy Sosa and Mark McGwire. And right next to it, there's an entire list of people saying whether they should be in or not. Surprise! Fun fact, most of them said that they should both be in. And also, there's a section dedicated to Pete Rose's accomplishments, and right next to him is a bunch of Twitter mentions of what people think about Pete Rose, and even more people want him in. And I'm saying, you might as well just do it, guys. I mean, and hell, my boy Duke Slater, the best player not in the Hall of Fame, has his own jersey on display in the Hall of Fame. Well, you're going to show these guys with these massive accomplishments, and if they have a lot of accomplishments to their names, just do it. Now, if it's like a minor guy that like if you like David Tyree's helmet or something like that, then maybe sure. But these are guys that had massive impact on the game. You can't just have a whole section dedicated to them and just say, "Oh, yeah, there's a portrait of him."
Well, I think David Tyree's not doing anything right now, so I think you could actually just get him to sort of stand there and place the football on his helmet, just reenact it. What else is he going to do?
Well, yeah, you know what I mean.
I know. But it's sort of funny that because I haven't been to the Baseball Hall of Fame. It's funny you bring that up, though. The Baseball Hall of Fame, which, again, much like we've discussed with the Pro Football Hall of Fame, is separate from those pro leagues. They have no problem profiting off it. But that's another story for another time. Lion number 5.
Yeah, before that, I do want to mention that, my thoughts on the Baseball Hall of Fame, thank God the Football Hall of Fame's not like that. Thank God that they are not like that. Now, but at least with football, I have confidence that they will right the wrong, because Duke later 2020. But baseball, that's the big reason as to why they're probably losing a lot of viewership. But who am I? Rob Manfred? Anyway, let's segue into a more recent Lion. Lomas Brown.
Many Pro Bowls? What is it, 9?
7 Pro Bowls.
7, okay.
6-time All-Pro. No, I take that back. 7-time All-Pro. Oh, no, I take that back even more so. 2 of those times where he wasn't All-Pro. No. Yeah, he was 7-time All-Pro. I take that back. 7-time All-Pro, 7-time Pro Bowler. The reason why he's not on the All-Decade team is because everyone on the All-Decade team, on the 90s All-Decade team, is already in. That's enough into tackle. And if you're going outside of that, it only makes sense to delve into Lomas Brown.
And I think now we're entering an era where being a Lion now hurts.
Yeah, it does hurt, unfortunately. And
I mean, the only time we're going to see an exception to someone on
There's another line on here that I'm not going to mention, Mel Gray, who had 7 All-Pros and a return specialist, and I think what hurts him is the fact that he was a Lion. I don't care, though, but yeah. But as for Lomas Brown, I mean, if you're an All-Pro 7 times, and if you're a Pro Bowler 7 times, that means you should be in, guys. But
yeah, no, they're absolutely. I definitely would be on board with that. So I see you're doing everything chronologically. So who would be your next Lion? Who would that be?
Oh, well, I do want to mention that Lomas Brown. Barry Sanders was great, but who was blocking on that line that Barry Sanders ran through? It's not like they were all just scrubs.
No,
I don't think they were the scrubs. And, he was a big leader on that team, too. It's not like Barry Sanders just showed the show. There was another guy on there that was pretty impactful. Yeah, it was Lomas Brown, guys. Just do it pretty soon. Lions fans really need it at this point. Things aren't really going to get better for them. But then again, they haven't really been. So, yeah. Well, I got to say, keep pushing. Let's see how that goes, but not before Karras and Emerson. But now let's just move on to a guy that's not on the ballot yet, but he will be in 2021. Megatron, Calvin Johnson.
Mm-hmm.
Calvin Johnson, one of the best players I've ever seen in person.
Definitely an impact player, one of the most exciting players. He may not have compiled enough, but I don't think that I don't hold that against him, because if he was definitely one of the best in his position.
Because he played for the Lions. That's already a pretty big deal in itself. You can't blame them for playing for the Lions of all teams. I mean, he played on a team that went 0-16. I mean, I wouldn't hold that against him. Calvin Johnson truly was. He retired at the age of 30, and he was already called one of the greatest players in NFL history. Hell, in 2012, where he was competing with Adrian Peterson for the MVP voting. Do you want to know something? He had an NFL record, 1,964 receiving yards. That's around 2,000 receiving yards by a wide receiver.
And and we can't also forget, there are a lot of people who retire around 29, 30, retire because they have to. He didn't. He chose to. He chose to walk away. He was still healthy. He could have easily kept playing.
Yeah, he could have. And, I do feel like they were in this era in which, you've seen Gronkowski retire and, Andrew Luck retire. Calvin Johnson, just like Gronkowski, is one of those guys as to why I think people are much more accepting towards short-term careers. Tony Baselli hopefully does make it in 2020. And you've seen these other guys, that I would like to see, like Alan Amici or Larry Brown, or these few other great players.
I think the one who really set that tone is Terrell Davis.
Oh yeah, Terrell Davis, also Kenny Easley. Don't forget about him.
Mm-hmm.
Patrick Willis is also. Patrick Willis is going to be his first-time eligibility this year.
I think he's got I don't think he's going to get in this year, but I think he's got a shot to at least be semifinalist.
He's going to compete with his own teammate Justin Smith, who also is a really good case for him. But as for Calvin Johnson, yeah. He was phenomenal. He that's Jerry Rice's own record. Keep that in mind. He also has the record for most amount of 1,000-yard games with 8. And consecutive games with 10 or more receptions with 4. And he tied Michael Irvin's record for most amount of 100-yard games in a season with 11. I mean, that's pretty impressive, I would think.
And unlike Michael Irvin, he's never held a knife to a teammate. But that's another story.
I also don't think he snorted cocaine.
Wow. The coke part doesn't bother me. It's this threatening to kill a teammate, I think, is a little bit bad. But that's another story. And Michael, if you're listening, I loved you as Deacon Moss in The Longest Yard.
Yeah, Michael Irvin made his third battle, by the way.
Yeah, that's true. All right, so I think we can put a little silver and blue bow on that one.
And I'd say that's a really, really good list of lines. Not bad for a team that is considered terrible.
Well, for a long, long time. and could be a long, long time more. But, things do change. I'm a Saints fan. I know. I lived through years of obscurity. But anyway, so from that we go to Green Bay, Cheeseland.
Yes, we're going to literally the opposite end of the spectrum here.
Yeah. Not in terms of climate,
literally
though.
The opposite end of the spectrum for the Lions, the Packers. I mean, Mike Daniels did the first recently by going to the Lions. I don't know how it is, but maybe but as the Green Bay Packers, they're called Title Town for a reason. Now, one might say, what are you talking about? Why are they called Title Town? They have 4 Super Bowls. Again, guys, the NFL was not founded in 1966. It was founded in 1920, and they have 13 total NFL championships. 4 of them are Super Bowls.
Yeah, people forget that the Lombardi Trophy is named after a guy who won a lot of NFL championships, not just Super Bowls. But I digress.
Yeah. Oh yeah, like you look at the Green Bay Packers, you think of a team that is known for excellence, dominance, and they're the only team that's publicly traded from us that I understand. They're the only team that is. Well, yeah, they had a CEO, Mark Murphy, their board of trustees. Their board of trustees for the Lombardi era. You could see him in the list, but might not. But the Packers, when you think of them, you think of an excellent franchise that succeeded in a place like Green Bay. I mean, Green Bay of all places, they made it work. They made it work, man. They made it work.
And I think it also is a testament, though, Vinny, is just the power of the NFL. Because a city like that could not be. This whole system does not work in baseball. It wouldn't work in hockey, and it wouldn't work in basketball. Only in football can you have a city under 100,000 in population, and through the power of television. But again, I'm segueing all over the place. Who's your first Packer?
They do technically share the mark with Milwaukee, though. It is essentially they share the Brewers and the Bucks technically.
Well, okay, technically, but again, it's not like. Let's see. I mean, Milwaukee doesn't even have a hockey team right now, so I mean, it's not like you're going to see an NHL team ever. Like even that wouldn't even work in Canada, where everything is just so huge. I mean, you couldn't make it work in like Brandon, Manitoba.
Milwaukee Admirals, which, if I understand, is the AHL affiliate of the Nashville Predators.
AHL. We don't do minor leagues here, Vinny.
That's true. I mean, hell, in Long Island, we don't even support minor league teams.
Thanks. All right, what's your Packer? Who you got?
Now, look at a team like the Packers. There's so many, but I'm going to condense just the 6, which is actually not as tough as you may think, because it actually is really tough. But it works. It works for the Packers because I think this shows these are like duh kind of guys. All these are duh guys. And I said duh, and we passed theirs. But these are guys that when you look at them, you say duh, they should be in because of resume alone. But, as we know, Packers know a little bit about a guy replacing another legend. And, recently Bias could show, hey, that guy is better. And sometimes that usually is the case. I mean, Rodgers, some argue, is better than Brett Favre.
So we're starting with Aaron Rodgers?
No. Listen to where I segue with this.
Okay.
But their first normal star, John Hudson, replaced another Packers legend. But unlike a guy like Brett Favre, this guy was forgotten. And is, to me, one of the second biggest omission in the Pro Bowl Hall of Fame, and I think is a near lock for this year. Laverne Dilwig.
Yep. Okay. I figured that it had to be that.
This is the guy. Laverne or Lavi Dilwig.
Yeah, I'm gonna call him Lavi because I just can't call him Laverne.
Lavi Dilwig. Here he is. Lavi Dilwig. The second best player not in the Hall of Fame.
Behind Slater, in your opinion?
The second best player not in the Hall of Fame. Lavi Dilwig.
Yeah, but who's number 1 to you? Slater?
Slater's 1, and by a slight margin of number 2 is Dilwig.
Okay.
Dilwig was incredible. He really was. The reasons why he's not really remembered is because
so long
by
ago.
Don Hudson, and Don Hudson became one of the greatest players in NFL history. Dilweg was phenomenal. Dilweg was a phenomenal player. But that tells you how good Don Hudson was, because this case, in a sense, bolsters shows that, hey, this shows that Hudson was doing better because he was able to eclipse a guy like Lobby Dilweg. Now, Dilweg, he's only one of two players in the 1920s All-Decade that's not it. The other guy is Hunk Anderson, whose resume has more to do with like the overall body of work in terms of his career in the NFL as opposed to just his playing career. So like Dick LeBeau in a sense. But yeah. Also, another reason why not many people really remember Dilweg is because he's almost like a Marvin Harrison type of way. He wasn't a very vocal player, wasn't a very flashy player. He just did his job, scored a touchdown, just rinse and repeat. And also, but he deserves so much recognition, man. He is from Milwaukee. He's a Wisconsin boy. In fact, he started off his career playing for the Milwaukee Badgers for a year, and then he became part of the Green Bay Packers. And that's why have him in this section. During that time, 9 years, which is what he had, that's pretty impressive, considering that was very, very rare for that time to play for 9 years in the NFL. And all over his final season, he made the All-Pro team every single year. So he made 8 All-Pros in his career. Phenomenal. Just 8 All-Pros, 5 of them first team.
And I'm really agreeing with you too. I think when they were talking about, and I forget who it was, I'm sure you know who the name it was talking about some of the oversights when he's talking about some of these past all-decade, and they did mention all-decade players who are not in. And if you're looking at correcting oversights, it's hard to come up with a bigger one than Dilweg. It's almost impossible.
No, Dilweg, I think, in terms of all-decade guys, Dilweg is the most glaring omission in terms of all-decade guys. No question in my mind. Dilweg is easily number one. In fact, Dilweg, on the Hall of Very Good, he's one of 5 guys they officially support, along with Duke Slater, Max Speedy, Ox Emerson, and, Max Speedy, Ox Emerson, Max Speedy, Ox Emerson, Al Weissert, and Duke Slater. And he's the guy that they have the most amount of info on. It's so long, the info with Laverne Dilweg, that his statistical sheet is on here, and it spans a whopping 27 pages. That tells you how big they are for this guy. That tells you something. The PFRA, the Hall of Very Good itself, this is the guy that they're pushing for the most. By far. This guy, Duke Slater.
And I think it's happening. I really do.
I will be so happy if Dilweg makes it. Mm-hmm. Which is crazy, considering that he played almost 100 years ago.
But sometimes you just latch onto things. I was so... granted, I had the chance to interview him, though, too, like Jerry Kramer. So when he got in, I was so happy.
Yeah, he was so good, man. In terms of years in the league, Don Hudson had more years with 11, and then he's tied with George House and Bill Hewitt for 9. In terms of receiving touchdowns, out of all those great guys, he's tied for 3rd along with Wayne Milner. And in terms of offensive touchdowns, he's number 3 with 12, and also 2 interceptions for touchdowns. Amazing, but this is what is going to make him in. This is going to compare him, Lobby Dilweg, to 3 Hall of Famers who played during his time. Wayne Milner, Red Badbro, and Bill Hewitt. 9 years played, all except Milner, who had 7. Consensus All-Pro. Dilweg was a 6-time Consensus All-Pro. Milner had none, Badbro had none, Hewitt had 5. In terms of second-team All-Pro, which again is important, Dilweg had 2, Milner had 2, Hewitt had 1, Badger had 4. So again, he was more so a first-team All-Pro than a second-team All-Pro. But in terms of total All-Pros, 8. Milner, 2, Badger, 4, Hewitt, 5. Championships, because, people like championships, 3. Milner, 1, Badger, 1, Hewitt, 2. Receptions, Milner has look more than him, but only by one. Dilweg is 123, Milner is 124. Everyone else is much lower. In terms of yards, over 2,000. Milner and Hewitt are around the 1,500 range, and Badger was around the 800 range. Yards per catch, 16.8. The next highest Badger was 16.4. Hewitt is 15.9, and Milner has 12.7. Interceptions, also 27. Milner, 0. Hewitt, 0. Badger, 2. And in terms of leading the league in interceptions, twice Dilweg did it. The only other guy to do that, and led the league in receptions twice. Also, interceptions, Hewitt once. Also, one of the greatest players in NFL history. Mm-hmm. One of the very greatest player of NFL history. Hall of Famers like Red Green says that he was the greatest man who ever brought me down. Barnum Grossi telling him that on his All-Star team. Rick Muller, greatest players ever faced. Best finance ever played. Wilfred Smith he had no peer, that no one else was like him. Again, what more do I have to say? Put Slavi Dilweg in the Pro Football Hall of Fame.
So how do you really feel about this?
How do I really feel about how I really feel about I think Dilweg it rivals only Duke Slater.
Okay.
I mean it.
I know you do. All right, so let's. We got to move on. We got to move on, buddy. Who's Packer number 2?
A guy that I think the PFRA is going to go hard for next. Vern Llewellyn. Vern Llewellyn.
Yeah, Llewellyn, yeah.
Vern Llewellyn, yeah, that's another guy. A guy from the 1930s. Okay, yeah, don't worry. But he played He played in the 20s as well.
Yeah, he was an all-decade guy, if I remember correctly.
No, he was not an all-decade guy.
Llewellyn wasn't an all-decade.
Surprisingly, no, he was not. But yeah, Vern Llewellyn, I've spoken to the guy, Ken Crippen. He says that once Dilweg gets in, again, I know I'm mentioning Dilweg a lot, but he was just that good. But once he gets in, they want to try to put Llewellyn in. But the only question that they have is, do they want to have another Lambeau Packer? I say, just go for it. Who cares? You need to show the passion, and that shows passion. Vern Llewellyn, oh man, he was so good in the 1920s. He led the league twice in touchdowns, both rushing and both in passing receiving touchdowns and rushing touchdowns. He led it twice. Again, so this is the guy that was able to catch well, and he was able to run well. Consensus first team All-Pro 4 years in a row. Impressive. Now, there's not a lot of statistics from that time, but he was also a great punter, in which that game, if you had a punt, it meant your team would win. And he was great at punting. So good that the Packers won 3 titles.
Mm-hmm. It was punting's a different ball game back then, for sure.
Very different ball game. But that's not a bad thing because, the game changes. And, there's nothing wrong with a game that changes.
Nothing at all.
Things change. Nothing lasts forever. It's the same thing. Like, I want these guys like Dilweg and Llewellyn because I don't want them to be forgotten. And, I don't think they're going to be forgotten now. That's I think that knowing that warms my heart. It really does. And like Llewellyn, in fact, Clark Judge on the Talk of Fame Network, one of the voters. He actually spoke to Hall of Fame voter Cliff Crystal.
Mm-hmm.
He says, "Who's the best Packer not in Canton?" And surprisingly, he didn't say Dilweg. He said it was Llewellyn.
Really?
I would personally disagree with that because I think by far Dilweg is the best player in the Hall of Fame. And don't worry, if you say, "Oh, you don't know who that guy is," don't worry. Judge didn't know of his name until he spoke to him. So don't worry. The voters have the same thing that a lot of people do. They sometimes don't remember names.
So I think it's almost safe to say that your next four guys, I mean, and it's not a disrespectful thing to say that they're just not going to measure up to those two.
The next guy might.
Who's that?
How about you have a guy that just recently died?
Who's that?
Can you imagine? I don't know. Like, we talked about Jack Butler before. Steelers, great. Definitely deserves to be in. Well, his record was tied by someone I do want to mention. And, I know this guy did not make the All-Decade team. And, yeah, that's fair. That's fair. And it's understandable that, some may not know who he is. Again, fair, but uncalled for. But, how many could say they did what they did with one eye?
Oh, I know where you're going. Okay, yep.
Bobby Dillon.
Mm-hmm.
Bobby
Yes,
Dillon.
yeah. It just was a couple months ago he passed away.
Yeah, he died on August 22nd. It's September 10th when I'm recording this. Man, he was a good player. I mean, can you imagine still having a record that holds this day, 52 interceptions? He was the second player in NFL history to record 50 interceptions by you. Second player ever. Second ever. And he only had one eye that worked.
Well, luckily it was his good eye.
Yeah. The reason as to why I'm big on him is because he overcame the intangibles. I mean, when Kirby Puckett lost sight in one of his eyes, he had to stop playing. But Bobby Dillon played with one eye like it meant nothing.
Yeah, but that's not the same game. Baseball's so much more nuanced. Football, you can just overcome something, that with just like brute force and other skills.
Yeah.
Baseball, if you lose a bit of that, I mean, it's just like you get a paper cut if you're a pitcher. And you just can't make that. You just can't throw the same slider.
Yeah, but again, can you imagine doing all that and holding a record that stands like over 50 years, over 50, almost 60 years later, and you only had one working eye?
It could hold just the way when you talked about like how the game evolves. It's back then there wasn't the same kind of scouting that there is now. If you've got somebody like let's just say Darrelle Revis, right, with Revis Island and all that, just it was the first one that came to mind. Mm-hmm. He's not going to lead the league in interceptions because you're not throwing to him. I mean, even just watching the game last night, watching my Saints, Eli Apple get abused. Well, why? Because why? Because they're targeting him. For someone to get 50 interceptions now, I don't want to say it's impossible, but I mean, Dillon's record could hold for a long, long time.
Well, not only that, I mean, you could say, his interceptions, they weren't as accurate with ball. True, but he was the second guy to ever get 50 interceptions. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's got to hold for at least something. He led the team in interceptions 8 times, which is a record that still holds to this day. And he also has the record for most amount of interceptions in a game with 4. And he also is tied for second most amount of interception returns with 5 in Packers history. And he was a 3-time unanimous first-team All-Pro. It's
an incredible resume, and it's a great story too, and that can't be discounted. Sometimes when you're just adding the great human story like that, it means something. It means a lot.
I mean, it's good. It helps a lot because, again, I emphasize he was able to do all this, and he was blind in one eye. I mean, that's got to count for at least something, I would assume. And yeah, Jack Butler has the same record, Butler is also on the All-Decade team, but Butler had the fortune of having both of his eyes. Dillon had only one of them.
No, it's a great story. Absolutely.
It's great.
Yeah.
Really great story.
Okay. So,
and I'm sad that he died.
Yeah.
But, I think with his recent death, it gets some more interest in the guy. And I do think that is definitely possible.
Now, they won't do it this year because the same thing. They don't want to...
No.
Just the same rule that I'll always say. You don't want to sort of like shed light on something that you should have done in the first place. Look how much crap that when they put in Pat Bowlen, they said, "Well, why didn't you do it sooner so that he could have enjoyed it?" Well, okay, he wasn't really due yet, but I mean, like that's.
Yeah, but then again, the fans are still going to want the guys in before they die, but that doesn't mean. But the fans saying, "Yeah, they died, but you should still put them in."
Sure, but I mean, sometimes you're still an entity, and you want to avoid bad press where you can. I mean, there's there's always.
I'm not a guy that really cares about that.
I'm not either, but there's always that human factor, and it comes back to just because it's still people voting on people, and when that happens, when you have that human element, like I know we're going back to baseball here. Why is Curt Schilling not in the Baseball Hall of Fame? Because he pissed off a lot of people who vote. And he still does so, and he doesn't care.
And that, like I would say that luckily football doesn't have that. But I think, the reason that's why I also advocate for a lot of these senior players is because, it's a positive moment for the families of those players. Yeah, even though it's done a little late, at the same time, their name's going to be honored in history, and they're always going to be remembered regardless.
Sure.
Even though they won't be allowed to see it, their family and their grandchildren.
No, and I get that, but I'm just saying you can't dismiss that human element and large organizations, and it's becoming a more and more corporate entity. The Pro Football Hall of Fame want to avoid bad press as much as they can. And I think they don't want it. No one wants it, and especially after the whole T.O. debacle.
Well, that was more so just a stupid decision. Also T.O., I would say because of that. That's the big reason for why I advocate for a lot of these old guys, because I think with enough push it does happen. And obviously, when I'm saying Bobby now in terms of Bobby Dillon, do I think he'd get in before Dillard or Llewellyn? No. But I don't think that's a bad thing. I think Dillon will make it in top most at least 10 years, probably. Just the trajectory of how it would probably be.
Well, depending on if they keep up this committee, and they put in. Yeah. When we don't know how long that's going to stay. I mean, unless you know something I don't know.
Maybe they might add a few people that are a little bit younger and probably even know a little bit more about history and do research. Maybe.
All right. Well, enough about Dillon. Who do we got next?
You always need to look at those all-decade teams and say to yourself, wow, all the quarterbacks on these all-decade teams always make the Hall of Fame. But there is one exception to this rule. Cecil Isbell.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
That is a name I've heard a few times by some members of the senior committee because, he is the only quarterback on any of the all-decade teams that is not in the Hall of Fame.
Oh, I didn't know that. I knew he was all-decade, but I didn't know that he was the only QB. Okay.
All QB. It could have been anyone else, but he was Cecil Isbell. He was the passing touchdown leader twice and the passing yards leader twice, and part of the 1930s all-decade team and the 1939 NFL champion with the Green Bay Packers, of course, because this is the Green Bay Packers selection. He is on there. And as for Cecil Isbell, he set records for passing yards in 1941, completions, touchdown passes, and also yards the following year. And he also set marks with 5 touchdowns in a game. That was a record at the time. And 22 straight games with a touchdown pass. Again, another record for the time.
Well, that right now, though, because I've been doing, as you know, I'm expanding our list that's going to have a lot more of the older players. And that fact alone, that's an impressive now, 22 in a row, with the touchdown pass. Because, I mean, just look how many people...
Yeah, that's not impressive.
Yeah, I mean...
Very impressive.
Yeah, absolutely. And look how many great quarterbacks have been struggling. I mean, just to do that. Yeah. I mean, 22... If you tell me that I've got a quarterback that's going to do 22 straight games with a touchdown pass, I feel pretty good.
Yeah, but with Isbell, this was a time in which that didn't happen so often.
Right, that's sort of what I'm trying to point at. I mean, how that's still very impressive.
don't take for granted. Like all this passive, do not take that for granted because there was a time in which stuff like that never happened, and Isbell was able to do it.
No, and that's an excellent number 4. Who do you have at number 5?
Also, who do I have at number 5?
Yeah.
Well, a guy that just fell into the senior pool recently, and people have been going crazy for him, and fits the same exact idea as, Calvin Johnson.
Mm-hmm.
You have Shannon in. What about his big bro? You can't forget about him either.
Shannon Sharp, yeah.
Yeah, Sterling Sharp.
Oh, Sterling Sharp. Sterling Sharp, yep.
Great player, and way too soon.
Oh, I know.
And way too soon. And, in fact, on his Hall of Fame speech, Shannon said, voters, acknowledge my brother. They didn't listen to him. They did not listen to Shannon. They might have listened to Skip, though, but I don't know.
Nice.
Yeah.
Really good player. I watched a lot of his games.
He's only one of 6 players to get the outright triple crown at the receiver position. The only other players to do that were Don Hudson, Raymond Barry, Elroy Hirsch, Jerry Rice, and Steve Smith. And in 1993, he broke his own record with 112 receptions, which made him the first player to have consecutive seasons catching more than 100 passes. And in 1994, which is when he had the massive neck injury, his 18 touchdown receptions were the second most in league history at the time, only behind Jerry Rice's 22 in 1987. And he also became the second Packer in team history to catch 4 touchdown passes in one game since Don Hudson in 1945. And, yeah, it comes down to it's a guy that led the league in many categories for many years. Well, not many years. A short-term career, but his very impactful player. And, a lot of people, I say into the Packers fans, he's the one that people mention his name the most, mainly because there's a lot of Packers fans who are in their 20s or their 30s and they're asking for him. But again, obviously when it comes to Packers, no one before Dilwig. One thing about Sterling Sharp, and he's one of those guys in which fans mention they want more wide receivers, and they always mention Sterling Sharp's name in the same sentence. What do you think of him?
I think he's an excellent choice. Gone too soon. God, the way I just said it makes it sound like he's dead. But I mean, and there's just nothing worse than when you're seeing a great career cut short, and you knew there was so much more.
Yeah, there's so much more, and fans definitely want Sterling Sharp, and they definitely want him. And they again, the fans, I think you're going to see a much, much more demand. They want to see more receivers, and of course, they're going to mention the receivers of recent. But for me, again, I would mention receivers in the old days, like the Dilwigs and the Dilwigs and the Speedies and all those other stuff, and then also them as well. Just not one too much in the recent ones. Yes, another recent one has the new numbers, but again, you can't just discredit the ones of old because the numbers don't seem as flashy.
No, absolutely.
What?
So number 6, I think I know who you might be going with, but I'm curious. Who do you have?
Again, talking about positions that aren't as that are neglected, but at least with this one, they're actually fixing it. Wide receiver, the fans are gonna I really do think it's gonna hit a fever pitch with a lot of fans when wanting wide receivers. Leroy Butler.
Yep, I knew it. Yes.
Leroy Butler.
Lambeau Leap.
What? Lambeau Leap. He created it. He's a 2-time semifinalist. So the last 2 years, he's been a semifinalist. However, the 4-time All-Pro, phenomenal player. I don't see making it before Palomalu, Atwater, and Lynch.
Oh, I totally agree with that. And that's the pecking order he should fall under when you're comparing him with those other 3. Butler was an exciting player, a fun player.
But some people think, but I want to mention, but also even then, even for number 4, he has some competition with Darren Woodson as well, but I think it would go to Butler because Butler has the all-decade nod, and Woodson doesn't.
Yeah, and and there's something also. He's a little bit more iconic. He's more remembered just because he was a great personality too, and that never hurts.
Lambeau Leap. Everyone knows about the.
Absolutely. And if you follow him on Twitter, he'll never let you forget it, Tim.
Well, yeah, like he was actually at a preseason game, and there was a statue about Lambeau Leap, and he just did it. He said, "I'm going to do the Lambeau Leap right now," and he just did it. And he said, "Hi."
I think that's even his Twitter handle, Leap 80 or something.
Yeah. Well, yeah, he created it.
Yeah, so why not?
I mean, that's pretty. I mean, I understand, it's a celebration in Packers games, but it's a pretty iconic celebration.
Well, it's an iconic celebration by a really good player. It's not like we're talking about the guy who created the high five, who was a former Dodger for a cup of coffee. That's another story for another time. And I think that also shows a testament to the Packers when that's your number 6 guy. Like that's better than what a lot of people can put forth for their first.
Yeah, it's a really, really impressive list. I mean, you have arguably the best player not in the Hall of Fame. You have maybe another one of them as well. You have a guy that was able to do what he did with one eye. A guy that won a guy that short career but huge impact. And you have a guy like Leroy Butler, who you can say has done a little bit of everything.
Mm-hmm. All right, so one more left. We close it off with the Minnesota Vikings.
The saddest fan base in the NFL.
The saddest?
Well, the Vikings are a team that most people know for. I'm sorry for the Vikings fans. They've suffered through a lot.
Yeah, beyond the Twins, they don't have a whole lot of wins there. They've never won a Stanley Cup. Let's see, hockey. The Timberwolves Timberwolves have always been garbage. Also, too, I mean, I still can't believe that the great hockey state of Minnesota lost an NHL team at one point.
That's crazy. Still to this day.
Yeah,
and the Dallas Stars won against the Buffalo Sabres in a definitely not controversial way at all.
Oh no, not at all. Not at all. Brett Hull skate in the crease.
Yeah, but again, Cleveland, Twin Cities, Buffalo, Atlanta, maybe.
Yeah, but at least Minnesota's got Twins. When was their last championship? I'm trying to remember.
1991.
Oh shit! It was that long ago. Yeah, that's why I was thrown off because they've been in the playoffs quite a bit, and they're so good right now. Yeah, 91 and then 87. At least it's some titles. But yeah, anyways, I'm digressing again.
Twins might get spanked by the Astros or the Yankees.
Yeah.
Oh man.
So the Vikings. Who do you? So the youngest team at only 1961, but I know you've come up with 6 good ones. No doubt in my mind.
But, yeah, I do want to mention this. Despite the fact that the Vikings are the youngest team in the division, they have the most amount of division titles.
I should have known that, but I didn't know that. But that makes total sense. I never even thought about that, but that makes perfect sense.
Yeah, the Vikings have the most amount of division titles. Again, this is not like some team that was like, this has been around the same. No, the Vikings are. Other than the Lions, you can make an argument that Packers and the Bears are definitely a national brand, but the Vikings are also a really popular team.
Very much so. Very much so.
Now, obviously, not as much as those other two teams, but the Vikings are a team that have a nice fan base, a team with a long-suffering fan base. I mean, they also have 29 playoff appearances as well. Very impressive. Extremely impressive.
Yeah, just because they don't have that Super Bowl ring, it's sometimes easy to forget how much success they've really had.
Yeah, the Vikings again, they're known for heartbreaks and you can kind of see it with the fans. But unlike the Falcons fans, where it feels like they're passive in terms of wanting Tommy Novus, and they mention, oh, we want this guy or what guy.
Well, there's one guy they're super. Yeah, I gotta guess here. It's got to be Jim Marshall. You're kicking off with, right?
I don't know, man, but Christian Ponder had some good moments, Also got to understand that, Percy Harvin had a good year, and man, he deserves it so much. When you're up so high in the north, the snow gets to get to your head a little bit. Of course, it's Jim Marshall. Who else would I actually, other than him?
Well, you talk about like Vikings fans pounding that one. I hear it all the time, but I mean, it's the same argument though that some other players will have. Do you go with longevity over a longer period of time at the elite? And I think Marshall was really good for a long enough time that if he ever gets in, I got no problem with that. Would you feel the same?
No, I would love to see Jim Marshall making the Hall of Fame, because the case for Jim Marshall is actually really similar to the case that Browns fans are most pushing for Clay Matthews Jr., except Marshall's case is a lot better than Clay Matthews Jr. because, Jesse Tuggle has more tackles, keep that in mind. But Jim Marshall, he's second to none. At the time of his retirement, he owned career records for most consecutive starts and games played, 270 and 282 as a defensive end. Defensive end.
Yeah, no small task. No small task at all. And there was part of a lot of really good teams.
And of course, Jim Marshall was known for the wrong way run. They still won that game, by the way. People mention it, but they still won that game over, I think it was the 49ers. And even though they didn't collect sacks back then, if it was done today, Baker would have had not Baker. I think it was someone else. Jim Marshall would have had 127 sacks. That would make him have more sacks than Derek Thomas, just below Ricky Jackson.
And yeah, again, why they can't just retroactively figure out sacks, I don't know. I'm sure they can, but oh well.
Something a little bit, something that my old friend the internet can do.
Yeah, well, that'll have to be someone else. I got my hands full. But yeah, Marshall is the one, and very vocal fan base on him, and they should be.
Very vocal fan base. Again, like the Vikings fans and the Falcons fans, again, both kind of cut from the same cloth in the fact that teams have been around for over 50 years and they had never won a championship. And, the Vikings have obviously been more successful than the Falcons, but whereas Falcons fans tend to be passive and, they want Novus, but they aren't that super crazy over him, even though they do really want Novus, Vikings fans really want Jim Marshall.
It's the cold, man. It changes your perception on things. When you have less to do, you care more about sports. Well,
yeah. I mean, with Jim Marshall, not saying that there was a base for Tommy Novus, no, because if I recall, wasn't Tommy Novus the guy that got the most amount of flack for ranking lower, and so you moved him up?
On my thing, yeah, Novus is Novus is definitely one of the ones I get the most, or had, not anymore. So I mean, because again,
what's Jim Marshall?
Marshall, not as much as you'd think. Comments, yes, but not necessarily translating into actual votes, which is strange.
Yeah, it's very, very interesting with Jim Marshall. Jim Marshall, in NFL's top 10 players not in the Hall of Fame, he's number 2. He was just behind Jerry Kramer. Now, obviously, that's outdated, but he's number 2. Now, I would say no, he is not the number 2 best player not in the Hall of Fame, but what do I know? but yeah. I would also say the reasons why Jim Marshall gets more talk than Tommy Novus, is because the Vikings won, the Falcons didn't. That's also another reason as to why. But Marshall was a great defensive end. I mean, he's also one of 11 players who have played on all 4 of the Vikings Super Bowl appearances in the 70s. That's also pretty impressive. Also, he has the NFL record for most amount of fumbles recovered with 30, most opponents' fumbles recovered with 29, Also, most consecutive regular season start by a defensive player with 270. Most complete seasons played by a defensive player with 20. And also most seasons played by a defensive player with Darryl Green Jr. say out. He is the ultimate Iron Man. And, yeah, that's what his case is. When you think about guys with a case for longevity, Jim Marshall's the poster child of that.
Absolutely. And I think there's a really good chance that he's going to get his due.
Not this year. I don't see this year.
Soon.
Oh yeah, I think soon. But the only question I have is, I feel like people are going to want LC Greenwood, for instance, a little bit more than Marshall because of the all decade now, and also because, but it's not like Marshall has been a finalist. If I recall, Marshall's been a finalist he's only been a finalist once in 2004, which, by the way, was also when he was elected into the Hall of Very Good.
Well, at least he got a plaque.
Well, yeah, but he has been a finalist once. But Greenwood's been a finalist 6 times.
Well, yeah.
I don't know. I think I might sway to Greenwood a little bit more.
Well, I do too, personally, but I'm just thinking. I don't think Marshall. I just see the senior candidates. I just see it happening in the next few years. I really do. Okay,
I could see Jim Marshall happening along with some of the other guys, like I mentioned, like Max Speedy, and obviously in the 2020 class, and a few other guys. But I could see Jim Marshall happening. I really do.
Mm-hmm.
I think in the next 5 years, you've heard his name mentioned a few times. So
definitely.
I would actually love to see it personally because you get both Carl Eller, Mick Tingelhoff, and you would get Tingelhoff was much afterwards, and Marshall. It's funny that Tingelhoff made it, but yet Vikings fans were more so focused on Marshall.
Right.
It was interesting. Now we're talking a lot about Marshall.
Yeah, no, exactly. We got a few more that we gotta get through. We're almost near the 2-hour mark. So
obviously Marshall is easily the best Viking, not Hall of Fame, and a guy that I would love to see. Like I said,
me too.
The equivalent of him is for like Pat Fisher. But you hear Marshall's name far more than Pat Fisher.
Right.
Now another guy, short but dominant career. But can you imagine being so dominant at your position that you were getting MVP votes, but yet you were on the defensive side of the ball?
It doesn't happen often.
That sounds pretty awesome. And he was a pretty awesome player. Keith Millard.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, Keith Millard, indeed.
For 2 years, he was the best at his position. No doubt. 88 and 89.
No, he was defensive player of the year in 89. That's also when he also got several MVP votes. I think he was like top 5 in MVP voting or something like that.
Yeah, you could even argue he had a better. He had even had a better 88 than 89. But
yeah, some people would say that, but if you look at defensive tackles, him and Dave Butts is actually his name, or the 2 defensive tackles on the all decade 80s team that's not in the Hall of Fame. I don't see Butts getting in for a massively long time, and for Millard. It comes to the fact that his career was cut short due to injury, major knee injury, and he played for a few more years with the Seahawks, the Packers, and the Eagles.
Yeah, he was done after that. I mean, he went from defensive MVP to out of the game in 2 years, and it's another shame. Just
player of the year, 4-time All-Pro, 2-time Pro Bowler. That's technically a 4-time Pro Bowler.
Yeah,
80s All-Decade team. Again, his record was broken by Aaron Donald in 2008 by sacks in a single season by a defensive tackle.
Yes, yeah. And there's so much to almost unpack there. He was so respected because, realistically, with Millard, he got in there. I'm trying to think. He debuted, I want to say, in '85 because I think he jumped to USFL first, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, Jacksonville Bulls. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So he's all decade based on 2 great seasons, and that's how great those 2 were.
Now I'm going to say, you're going to elect guys in for 2 great seasons. Well, he also had some great seasons before that as well.
Yeah,
it's not like he was just.
No, but I mean, those 2 years were that much better than everything else he had done before.
And you made him on the all-decade team, and what hurt him is the fact that massive knee injury.
Mm-hmm. Oh, totally.
And And keep in mind, he played for the Vikings, a team who's one of the greatest players in the team history, John Randall, by far has the most amount of sacks ever by a defensive tackle with like 130 something. But he never had the most amount of sacks in a single season. He never had the record. Millard had the record. Millard had the record.
Yeah, man.
Not Randall.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, Randall's the better player because Randall's arguably one of the greatest defensive tackles ever. The sacks alone will tell you that. But yeah,
no, that's a great name. That man, is he so good? Who do we got next?
Let's go back with an '80s all-decade team and go a little bit more into from the trenches to the backfield. Joey Browner.
Oh, yes.
Now,
yes.
This is another good name. Obviously,
Very good.
I'm not as high on him as like Miller or even Marshall, but Browner, 6-time Pro Bowl, 4-time All-Pro. Okay, over 1,000 tackles.
Mm-hmm.
Led the team in 9 defensive categories over his career. Also, I'm not saying this means anything, but he also has a record in the Pro Bowl with 3 fumble recoveries returned for touchdowns, but in the playoffs, including the playoffs, he had 40 interceptions for 505 total yards. Yeah. He's a good player. I think it's going to be a long while because you have to look at these other defensive backs throughout the years before you get to Browner. But, for safety, it's a position that's getting a little bit more respect.
Very good player. Another very good player.
But not full.
A lot of fun memories watching him play. Yeah, no. I love it. Who do we got next? Ponder.
This is another guy that I've heard the name for a little bit, but I don't feel as much about him. But maybe on the Wikipedia page, it even says that they want him for the Hall of Fame. But I don't really see it as much as Marshall. But whatever. Chuck Foreman.
I like Chuck Foreman. I like him a lot.
Now, you look at a guy like running backs today, they're not just used as runners anymore. They're used as pass catchers. And they're used for like multiple different positions. Like, for instance, there could be a case for Darren Sproles of the Eagles because he's like, I think he's like 4th all-time in total yards, something like that. Mm-hmm. Which is really impressive considering what he's able to do. But yeah, Chuck Foreman, in terms of running back, he may not have a lot of rushing yards, but he's one of the greatest catching backs in history. The Spin Doctor is what he was called.
I know, isn't that the best name?
That was his nickname. His nickname was the Spin Doctor.
I know, it's one of the best ever.
He was so much of an elusive runner. One question you could maybe say is he was arrested as part of a mail fraud scheme in 2000, but that's not going to affect him. But then you can't
not as much in football. It doesn't.
Yeah, it's not going to affect it. He was a 5-time Pro Bowler, 4-time All-Pro, 2 of them first team, Rookie of the Year in '73, and also led the league in receptions as a running back. Keep that in mind. As a running back, he led the league in receptions. As a running back. As a running back.
He was Roger Craig before Roger Craig.
Yes, he was Roger Craig before Roger Craig. Not saying that he's better than Roger Craig. No, Roger Craig is obviously better because Roger Craig is should be in. Don't know why he isn't.
Don't get me started on that one.
Oh, my God. Yeah.
That might be my new personal pet project, actually.
He also has the most amount of receiving touchdowns by a 10-touchdown rusher. Also has the most games with the rushing and receiving touchdown with 5.
No, I love this. Love that pick.
It's like, again, it's one of these instances of a guy that was used for multiple facets of the game.
Right.
Yeah, like this happens so much now, but this is the guy. He was more so unheard of back then that they were able to catch the ball at the rate that he gets. Again, he was a running back that led the league in receptions. When do you ever hear that?
You just don't.
Do you ever? I don't think I've ever heard something like that. He had a total of over 3,000 receiving yards.
Which, again, back now, it's not that uncommon, but back then, unheard of.
Yeah, it's like, again, I don't. That's impressive.
Oh, for sure. All right, so we got two more.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, two more. It's a good two more. So who could these two more be? How about a guy that an interesting one.
You're trying to pick from your list. I love it. You don't know which to finish off with. Finishing off with a bang.
Matt Blair, that's another one.
Yeah, okay.
Linebacker.
Yeah.
During that era, very underrated for his time.
Mm-hmm.
Very good on special teams, too. He was, if I recall, he's third all time in blocked punts with 20. Again, you're a guy on defense that is one of the most notable contributors to special teams in recent memory.
And that does hold some weight for sure. Of course, half of those would now be called back for roughing the kicker.
Again, different time.
I know. I'm just being a smartass.
Also, I don't care. Yeah, I mean that alone, but he has a long way to go, and obviously he's not the best linebacker of his time. But
no, it's a very good. It's one worth talking about. He'd be one of 6 people I'd mention for sure, right around at this spot.
Yeah, he's definitely a guy that I would mention for sure. And now, how could I end this?
I don't know. If it's Dante Culpepper, I'm very disappointed in you.
Jared Allen.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, I understand it's a little bit of an interesting one to end with, but, well...
No, and the man who ended his career with the best post possible on social media.
Literally riding into the sunset.
Yep.
He literally went on his horse and rode into the sunset. And currently, what is he doing now? He's currently a professional curler.
Is he really?
That's serious. He's a professional curler now. Not bad for a guy that led the league in sacks twice, also had a record 4 career safeties, which is a record, and was a 4-time All-Pro, and was a 5-time Pro Bowler, and was great with both the Chiefs and the Vikings, and had 136 sacks.
And rocked a mullet.
That too. And again, man, most consecutive games with a sack with 11. Also, times he led the league in sacks. Only a few players have ever done that. J.J. Watt, who is active. Jamarcus Ware, who will be eligible in 2022. Kevin Green, who's in the Hall of Fame. Reggie White, who's a legend. And Mark Gastineau, which Jets fans should really mention his name more. Again, that's incredible. And most safeties in the career tied with Ted Hendricks of the Raiders. And also, he is also tied with Doug English for that record as well, who, again, Doug English just has no chance of making the Hall of Fame. But, again, he has the record of safeties. He has a record for sacks. Very dominant player in the 2000s. I mean, what's not to like here?
I think that's an excellent. That's a great way to finish, buddy. Vinny,
but there's actually only one problem with him.
What's that?
He just happened to retire in 2015, where a whole bunch of guys retired. But one thing for sure, 2015 is going to be one guy, and that's Peyton Manning. And yeah, Charles Woodson, but you need to remember the forehead. Just always need to remember the forehead. And the 5 MVPs, but also that forehead.
Forehead. He's got a 5 head.
Oh, yeah. Now, oh my God. Can't put one for all those guys.
That's a lot. Well, and you know what, Vinny, we'll do this again once we know because we get the preliminary candidates coming out shortly. But I really want to talk to you again once they announce either the senior candidates or maybe they're just going to do a direct elect. I'm not sure.
I want to talk about preliminary candidates as well, because even the guys on there have interesting cases to mention, and I didn't really mention a lot of those guys here because it was mostly a lot of dedication to senior guys.
Okay, well,
not really much active.
Sure. So then let's we'll do that. We'll do that again. We'll do that shortly. And Vinny, thanks so much for your time, buddy. I appreciate this.
Man, you were the one that suggested to me when I talked to you on Twitter. I had no idea I would be doing podcasts, dude. This is truly something that's gonna hold my heart for literally the rest of my life. And honestly, I understand that I'm still gonna be doing stuff with you, but when someone's calling for me, I'll make sure I tell them to reach out to you.
I appreciate it.
You were the one who saw the talent in me, man. That's always, I'm always going to remember, and it really is something I'm going to cherish. And I can't wait to do more stuff with you in the future. And don't worry, the senior and the contributor page and coach is coming soon. It's just with college and whatnot, and get grooving. It's understandable.
We can't all be beach bums like me.
So that's true. A lot of us have a lot of work, and again, this has really just been a blast. This entire series, it really has been a massive blast.
Nah, it's my pleasure, buddy.
I never thought this would ever happen. I really do, and I feel really, really confident that I'm happy I got the names out for these guys, and I wish nothing but the best for so many of these. And it really is. It really means a lot to me. Seriously, thank you so much, man.
My pleasure. Well, we'll talk soon.
Can't wait to do it in the future.
All right, later.
Have a great time, Kirk.
All right, thanks. Thanks, Vinny.